Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not you should pay down debt or to invest. We're going to break down what that means to you in the context of personal as well as in the regards of business. So, if you're new here, my name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help people and businesses thrive. So, welcome. I go live right now most of the time, most every weekday at 11. I miss a day occasionally when I have things that have to happen that I can't make it. But so please feel free to tune in live if you so choose, or catch it on the replay. If you have questions, comments, concerns, make sure to leave them in below. I am happy to answer and help and try to get responses as quickly as possible, but sometimes that doesn't always work. So why was I laughing? I just wanted to tell you that because the last several days, the device that I use to broadcast called the Rodecaster Pro 2, I thought it was malfunctioning. Well, it wasn't. I had accidentally pushed a button that I shouldn't have pushed. And I didn't realize I'd pushed the button. It didn't make sense to me because I don't remember pushing the button at all, but it wasn't working the way that it was supposed to. I could not figure it out. It was driving me nuts. And it turned out it was just a simple button. Like, it was the simplest of problems that was easy to fix. And I'm back and it's awesome and I'm happy. And it was just so dumb. Like, I just felt so dumb to have done that. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you. That's why I was laughing. Let's get started, shall we? Okay. So, should you pay down debt or invest? Now, first of all, let's be very clear on this one. We're talking about excess cash. We're not talking about if all you have is $10 to your name, that's not where you should be focusing. You should be focusing on developing reserves and developing money to have for liquidity purposes, because a lot of investments require a time frame that you won't have the money available to you. So there's a liquidity problem. So this is after you've established, depending on the financial advisor, and this is not meant to be financial advice per se, but it's just these are good tips for helping you to build not only your personal life, but also your business. And we'll talk about both. So what do I mean by that? You want to have anywhere between 6 months and a year of savings before you're investing. Now, those are ideal numbers. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you should absolutely have to do. That's what most financial advisors recommend. Depends on your financial advisor, depends on your goals, depends on what you've got. If you don't have those things, I strongly recommend seeking out a financial advisor. If you need a recommendation, I've got friends. I know people. Anyway, so this is about decisions about excess cash, things that you beyond that 6 months. Do not put yourself in a bad situation for the sake of investing or even paying down debt. And here's why. Liquid money is better than illiquid money. If you pay down a bunch of debt and then can't pay other things, then that creates a problem, or could create a problem. So keep that in mind. Paying down debt it should be part of a plan and not just willy-nilly haphazard, do it however you feel like doing it. Now, so let's kind of talk. There's a difference between consumer debt and business debt. Okay. The reason why this is important is because credit cards typically range in interest rates between 5% and 30%, depending on the credit card, right? So the reason why this is so important to know is consumer debt is almost always going to be more expensive than business debt, because business debt is typically meant to be leveraged for other purposes. For instance, if you're investing in a home in order to rent that home out for a long-term rental purpose. We talked about short-term rentals earlier, but for a long-term rental, that debt is being leveraged. It's not just sitting there costing you money, okay? You're renting a house, you're doing something, short-term rental, same thing. You're doing something with that money that's bringing you an income. That's called leveraged debt, okay? That's not the same thing as going on a shopping spree to Nordstrom's, Macy's, the mall, having a blast and blowing a bunch of money and having it all on credit cards. That is not the same thing, right? Because you're leveraging your money or debt, as the case may be, to benefit yourself in an investment sort of situation. So there's an offset purpose that goes with those things. That's why it's so important that you differentiate between these two things. Consumer debt, you need to look at the cost or the interest that you're paying on the consumer debt, so credit cards, versus the interest that you're going to gain by investing it. If you're paying more on your credit cards in interest, then you should invest or you should pay down your credit cards. It's a simple thing because you can't invest enough to make it worth your while rather than to pay down that credit card or the whatever debt you've got, that personal debt. Now, based on my research and financial planning, it's about 6% is about. So if it's over 6%, you should pay down debt, your interest rate. If it's less than 6%, then you should worry about paying into your investments. Why? Because most investments are hitting anywhere between 10 and 15%, depending on the investment. So your net, if you will, your net percentage is 4%, right? If it's 10% and your credit card is 6% and you're making 10% on it, then if you were to pay down that debt, then you're losing that 4%, right? Does that make sense? If that doesn't make sense, leave something in the comments below. Let me know. But the idea being that you want to pay down that debt for that instance. The other reason why you'd want to pay down the debt is if you are trying to buy a house, if you need to worry about your credit score for whatever reason. If your credit score isn't great, then work on paying down your debt. Don't worry so much about investing because you'll get, like I was talking about, leveraging debt for good purposes. If your credit score is high, then you can use that debt better to leverage, right? You'll get lower interest rates, you're a lower risk, and you're going to be able to buy more houses and afford more houses in order to do the long-term rental thing or the short-term rental thing or whatever it is that you choose to do. Point is that so maybe it's worth taking the temporary hit for paying down debt to get to your next goal, right? So it just depends on where your situation is. That's why I'm saying this is not specific advice. This is just what you should consider when you're deciding to whether to pay down debt or to invest. Now, the next thing is that you're going to want to, the question that you're asking and that you're thinking about is whether or not, like if you're paying down debt, what should you start with? Well, if you have enough cash in the bank, roughly, beyond the 6 months, okay? So say you have 6 months, you have a year, but you could live on 6 months, and that extra 6 months could then pay off the debt, then pay off the debt, right? It's easy to do. You're no longer being charged interest. It'll jump your credit score up, and then you can start leveraging things otherwise. If that's not an option, and I think for the majority of people, it's not. If that's not an option for you, then at that point, what you want to do is look at your debt. For instance, if there's a low balance credit card that you can pay off quickly, that maybe it's not the highest percentage, but then you could then take that credit card amount, okay, and pay off a higher percentage rate card, then that's an option for you, okay? So you're looking at, okay, so say you have a $500 credit card, but it's not that high of interest rate. Maybe it's 10%, 15%. I don't know. Yeah, you might have a higher interest rate on a different card, but if you can pay off that debt, then you eliminate that minimum payment, which is the goal of this, right? Once you eliminate that minimum payment, then you can then put that towards the higher balanced and or higher interest rate card. Okay. Now, there's another argument to be made that you want to pay down the debt with the highest interest rate first. And that one's valid too. I'm not suggesting it's not. In fact, I would say pay off the ones that you could pay off fast as possible, and then worry about those, because those minimum payments could then go towards the higher interest rate cards faster, right? You're going to be able to pay that down faster, and it's going to cost you less money overall to be able to do that. So this is where you need to sit down and look at your interest rates on your cards, look at your balances, see what you can take care of as quickly as humanly possible without putting yourself in a bad situation, right? The goal is to not stress your finances out to the point where then you just have to recharge the card because you paid it off, right? If you're in that situation. If you're flush with cash, it's a non-issue, right? You don't have to worry about that. So that's why it's very important. Don't put yourself in a bad situation just for the sake of paying off debt and then not be able to meet your other monthly obligations, because not everything can be paid for with a credit card yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Anyway, so that's your consumer debt. Now, that's a whole different type of debt than, say, house debt, right? House interest is not always, but typically, depending on your financial thing, and you need to see a CPA or a financial planner for this, interest on a home is typically tax deductible. So should you pay that off in exchange for not having the payment? The answer is it depends on your situation. If you're looking at retiring soon and the idea of having a house payment and you've got the money in the bank is just vile to you and you don't want to ever have to have a house payment again, then it might be worth paying off that debt. If, however, you are working on all these investments and you are having these plans and stuff like that, and maybe your income's high enough that having the interest deduction is worth it, then maybe you don't pay off the home. It depends on your financial situation, right? Like that's really what we're talking about here. So you need to evaluate all of these things to decide what you're going to do. Now, the next thing of this is, what about debt for a business? Because we typically talk about business matters on here, right? So here's the thing. In business world, debt is less expensive than equity. So debt makes more sense to take on in a business sense than it does in a personal sense, because the business it's being leveraged rather than you personally. So, and what do I mean? Like, there's a cost of equity and there's a cost of debt, and which results in what's called the weighted average cost of capital. Okay, so it gives you a percentage. At that point, it makes more sense to pull in debt than it does to pull in an equity holder, someone that's going to buy equity, because of the cost that's associated with equity and the loss of control with it. And you're also leveraging debt. For instance, say you're going to leverage debt in order to have a new marketing campaign that, you closing at this rate, you're able to close 50% and your profit margin is 50%, but the rate on the business debt is only 10%, right? Or 15, whatever. Well, you're leveraging that debt to grow, right? That's not the same thing as going into debt, like I said, to buy shoes or buy consumer items. You're using that debt in order to take your business to the next level. So you've got to think strategically about this. Using debt in the context of a business can be a very good thing, unless you do stupid things with the money still. That's a bad thing. But as long as you're using the debt to build the business, to make payroll, whatever it is that needs to happen, okay, as long as you're using the debt for that purpose, then that's different and better than using it for consumer expenses and stuff like that. So I hope this helps break down which one you should do. First, it takes an honest assessment of your debt and your goals, right? Like, that's the thing that you need to be very cognizant of. You need to think about what it is your goals are. Having a debt-free life is great, but sometimes that's not realistic. Sometimes you need that money for other things, and I totally get that. So sit down and have those honest conversations. with yourself, and if you're in a relationship with somebody, uh, with your significant other, if that's the type of relationship you have, and decide what your goals are and decide the plan on how to get there, and then start executing and making these payments and doing the things that you're going to do. So it really comes down to being aware, because a lot of people that are in debt, and nobody's perfect, so there's no judging here. People that are in debt don't know how much they're in debt, and then they don't know how to get themselves out of it. So pay attention to these things, help look at these details, and you're going to find out where you're going to head with this and what type of finances you want to have. So thank you. If you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like and hit that bell icon, and we'll see you later. Take care.